numerous challenges in court. The federal moratorium protecting U.S. renters from eviction during the pandemic is set to expire in just roughly over 28 hours. The moratorium issued by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention officially ends July 31st. The most recent extension was issued in June, and federal officials indicated they had no plans to extend it again. While most states have given renters few additional weeks of protection, millions remain worried about losing their homes. Roughly about 24 hours to go before this moratorium ends, more than 1.4 million Americans are saying that it's very likely that they'll be evicted from their homes in the next 2 months, according to the U.S. Census Bureau Household Pulse Survey. On top of that, about 4.9 million renters say they have no confidence in their ability to pay rent next month, while 7.4 million are still trying to catch up on rent payments. While the federal government has funneled more than $46 billion in assistance to the country's renters during the course of the pandemic, distributing that money has proved to be difficult. In some cases, the money never reached its intended recipients. Ultimately, little has been done to curb an all but certain wave of eviction proceedings once the moratorium is lifted. Meanwhile, the White House is pushing state and municipal governments to do everything they can to stave off an eviction crisis. It's fundamentally the responsibility of states and local governments to get relief in the hands of renters and landlords. Here's what's happening as the Eviction Lab. This was especially true in states and municipalities that prohibited landlords from taking the first steps of the eviction process. And that process includes issuing the eviction notice or filing a case in court. Now, experts say an eviction crisis is looming in the United States. Through its research, the Princeton University group noted that eviction spikes during short periods throughout the pandemic where no moratorium was in effect. For example, in the 2 weeks between the end of the CARES Act's coverage and the start of the moratorium extension, evictions were up 68% from, historical average. By August 30th, filings had returned to pre-pandemic levels. The increase, researchers say, such landlords were acutely aware of what moratoriums were in place and were ready to kick out tenants who hadn't paid their rent as soon as it was legally allowed. Around 16% of adult renters were not current on their housing payments as of July 2021, according to an analysis by the Center of Budget and Policy Priorities. So we're going to see what we've been managing to stave off, this wave of evictions that is just going to crush some of these areas. Renters of color are more at risk. While few eviction cases have been filed throughout the pandemic, Black and Latino renters, particularly female renters, remain disproportionately at risk of being filed against for eviction and being evicted. The Eviction Lab data showed that the filings after March 15, 2020 target the same communities and individuals who were most at risk of eviction prior to the pandemic. Notably, Black renters received a disproportionate share of all eviction filings, while Black renters often make up 22.8% of all renters tracked by the Eviction Lab. They were the subject of 35.2% of all eviction filings between March 15th and December 31st. So what can renters do? While the process of finding and securing aid varies across states, the Treasury Department has published a list of state, local, and tribal government emergency rental assistance programs that can help people. We'll post it shortly. The Consumer Finance Protection Bureau has also issued guidance for renters, landlords, and homeowners. For renters, the Bureau offers advice on paying rent and utilities, as well as talking to your landlord about a payment agreement. It also outlines what you can do to avoid eviction and goes through the process of your rights as a tenant. Unfortunately, we're heading down this path. We're going to see what the government does, the federal government does. This is Ted Hicks from Late Night Parents.